This video is brought to you by Unique.
My dilemma this year was between the iPhone 13 mini and the 13 Pro, and although I'd blend the two to create the ultimate 13 mini Pro, unfortunately I can't. But I can share with you my thought process when choosing my device this year, which might hopefully help you justify the $270 price difference between these very different yet very similar phones. Alright, so to be objective when comparing the iPhone 13 mini with the 13 Pro, let's first clear the air and go over the main differences between the two devices in order to focus on what matters later. The most obvious first difference from a glance here is the physical size, of course, of both devices and the screen. The iPhone 13 Pro has a 6.1-inch screen while the mini has a 5.4-inch one. The main difference that people are raving about this year is the introduction of ProMotion, or 120Hz adaptive refresh rate on the Pro model, something that the mini does not possess. Being able to understand the fundamental of physics, the smaller size of the 13 mini allows for only so much battery capacity, which means that the 13 Pro on paper comes with 5 more hours of video playback, giving it a total of about 22 hours. Also, the 13 Pro has an additional third telephoto lens in the camera array and some other camera improvements and features which we'll touch base at a later point. The external finishes are different too, where the Pro comes with a frosted fingerprint-resistant back and glossy side rails that attract a lot of fingerprints, by the way, and such camera module as well. The Mini is the exact opposite, and that's why I chose it in white, because it hides fingerprints completely. In the meantime, moving on to some more inconspicuous differences, the 13 Pro can be configured to a 1TB of storage, while the Mini caps at 512GB. Now, both devices rock the latest A15 6-core Bionic chip, but the Mini has one less GPU core compared to the 5-core of the 13 Pro. Another not so broadcasted difference is that the 13 Mini has a bit dimmer max brightness, coming at 800 nits compared to the 1000 nits of the 13 Pro. So to sum up everything I said so far: bigger and a bit brighter screen with ProMotion, fewer fingerprints, a larger battery, a third lens with LiDAR, and a useless additional GPU core for $270 more. That is the iPhone 13 Pro. Is it worth it though? Why am I comparing the 13 Pro to the 13 Mini? Well, if the Mini, God forbid, didn't exist, the 13 Pro would have been my choice of a phone this year. If you're new to the channel, I am a massive advocate for compact phones, and the first Mini was the device that reminded me of that freedom. Coming to the Mini after years of using only the largest of iPhones, I was super excited to have such a petite powerhouse in my pocket, yet I did start to miss some of the Pro features that only come in the larger format. Now, I know that the Pro is just a moniker, and paying extra for Pro does not turn people into professional anything, but still there are some features that the Pro model has that the 13 Mini lacks. The most obvious for me, and the one that I miss a lot, is the third telephoto lens. Now, as a father, I appreciate the telephoto lens a lot because, believe it or not, it helps me catch the great family moments easily. Although the 13 Mini shoots almost the exact same wide and ultra-wide images, for the most part I have to get really close to my kids in order to frame the moment just right, which 9 times out of 10 ruins the entire moment. The telephoto lens is perfect because as I witness the action, I can catch it from a distance without disturbing the little beasts having to get closer. Aside from that, the 77mm focal length also shines, delivering some of the fastest and creamy looking portrait shots that I could never grab should I start looking for my mirrorless camera. Now, having used all iPhone devices so far, I can really attest and say that the LiDAR sensor does not make me a better low-light photographer, but I do notice a difference when I use the cinematic feature, which I tend to play with every once in a while. So if you're an occasional shooter and you don't care that much if you get closer to your subject, I believe both devices can serve you well, delivering great photos. Moving on to ProMotion, which is a big deal this year. After years of tech reviewers booing the iPhones for not providing high refresh rate displays, 2021 was the year when Apple delivered on everything, including that. Having used and compared all the iPad models, being able to easily distinguish ProMotion versus non-ProMotion displays, I was always irritated at this trend of wanting to move to a refresh rate that nobody would care about. Yet, upon booting the iPhone 13 Pro for the first time, I immediately noticed the difference, which really concerned me, to be honest. It made me feel like a fool at first. I
hate being wrong and I couldn't run away from my mistake, but after using the Pro for a while, I began feeling good about myself again. Let me explain. For some reason, a high refresh rate makes a more significant first impression on a smaller device like the iPhone, not so much on the iPad. Everything seems a lot smoother and hence the feeling of speed and proclaiming that this device is actually faster. Although all animations and transitions throughout the OS are exactly the same as any other 13 model, the high refresh rate gives this sudden feeling of holding and using a faster device. If you ask anyone to compare side by side the regular 13 and the 13 Pro, not tech-savvy people will conclude that the 13 Pro is actually faster, although it being just as fast as the other phone. That feeling, however, goes away the same way your perfume goes away an hour after you spray it on your body, because you get used to it. The only way you can feel the ProMotion aroma again is to immediately grab the 13 mini to witness the opposite effect of supposedly holding a slower device. Now, truth be told, if you don't have both devices in both your hands to compare though, like most people don't, you really stop caring about that feature after a while and the 13 Pro becomes yet another iPhone. Cool feature though. And here comes the battery life difference between both devices. Although Apple claims 5 more hours of video playback on the 13 Pro, the battery life capacity of those larger devices this year feels like having permanently glued the MagSafe battery to the 13 mini. It is vast and endless, in an exaggerated way of course, but it is definitely noticeable, especially when we take a glance at the mini again. This year, Apple really delivered on that aspect of the devices, and if you're someone who participates in a lot of meetings or streams a lot of media or plays games or do a lot of FaceTime calls, this alone could be the reason to cough that extra $270. The Mini can't compete with that, but it can beat the 13 Pro in many other aspects. Before I share them with you, however, no matter which iPhone 13 you go for, Unique has you covered thanks to their wide variety of cases. As an advocate of multi-purpose solutions, the first case that I'd like to pay attention to is called Transforma, and besides being an up to 6-foot drop protection case, it also serves as an ideal prop and hands-free solution. Aside from looking unique while still providing MagSafe compatibility, in a snap of a finger, it turns any iPhone 13 into a mini tablet without the need of additional attachments. The next case is actually the one that I gifted to my mom and her iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is called Heldro. This case features a flex grip band that turns any iPhone into a single-handed machine. Heldro comes with 2 bands, by the way, to match your aesthetics. The included wrist strap is yet another peace of mind that combined ensure the expensive iPhone all around. Both of these cases come in various colors. Considering that Unique has a vast range of good-looking and clever cases, it will be a missed opportunity if you don't check out the first links in the description below and browse Unique's catalog of products. So the 13 mini recovers in this match, punching back with the most apparent feature of being the phone with the unpretentious size. After having used mini iPhones for a while now, I can easily get confused when I grab the 13 Pro, thinking that I'm actually holding the Pro Max. Not because the 13 Pro is ginormous, it is unfortunately the status quo, but because the 13 mini is that compact. Having played with a lot of older iPhones recently, I see a lot of charm in the rounded edges of the older generation devices. And although I was the first to congratulate Apple on the latest sharp edge design resembling the most beautiful iPhone 4 of the past, I'd find any iPhone 12 or 13 larger than the mini uncomfortable, and I believe that is the reason all larger iPhones prior to that followed, that smooth trend. Having said that, the 13 mini is clearly the phone to use one-handed if a clever case is out of the equation. I'm not a small individual and I do struggle to use the 13 Pro one-handed as well, something that is not a problem with the 13 mini at all. So going back to the price difference, am I willing to pay $270 extra to get the 13 Pro? My choice, I believe, is obvious, and I'm not. That, however, does not mean that I don't miss the telephoto lens of the 13 Pro and also the frosted back. To me, the ideal phone would be the same 13 mini with 2 lenses but with a tad thicker shell to accommodate an even larger battery, and again 2 lenses, but replacing the ultra wide this time with a telephoto lens. Throwing in the frosted back of the 13 Pro while retaining the matte side rails and camera array of the 13 mini, I would call this masterpiece the 13 Mini Pro. By the way, I have a great 13 mini MagSafe accessories video which you can check out here. And if you want to watch my 13 mini review and the reason I call this tiny phone a
chef's kiss, click right here. It's been an absolute pleasure. This is E, over and out.